There is a specific smell to a blueprint that has been developed with ammonia. A sharp chemical tang that hits the back of the throat like a memory of hard work. It is the smell of the diazo process, the scent of a time when architecture was a physical act, not a digital hallucination. I was standing in my garage, the air thick with dust and the comforting aroma of degrading paper, running a warm iron over a sheet of wrinkled vellum from 1968. It was the original schematic for the storm drain system under 4th Avenue. My grandson Alex calls this hoarding. He tells me to digitize everything, to put it in the cloud. I tell him that clouds dissipate, clouds rain, and when the servers crash or the file formats become obsolete, the cloud evaporates. But ink? Ink stains the fibers. Ink is a commitment. A hard drive can forget. Vellum remembers forever. I pressed the iron down, smoothing out a crease that ran through a subterranean junction box. I treated the paper like skin. It was fragile, yes, but it had survived 50 years of neglect. That is more than I can say for the corrupt JPEG files on my computer. I was just folding the sheet back into its tube, labelled Sector 7, Drainage, when my phone buzzed on the workbench. It vibrated against a jar of drafting pencils, a frantic rattling sound. "Alex," I said, picking up the device. "Grandpa." His voice was breathless, shredded by the roar of heavy machinery in the background. It's gone. The concrete is gone." "What do you mean, gone?" I asked, wiping a smudge of graphite from my thumb. "Concrete doesn't vanish, Alex. It cures. It sets." "It's not setting," he screamed, the panic cracking his voice. "We're pouring the main caissons for the Zenith Tower. We're at 80 feet. The geotech report said we'd hit bedrock at 60. We're pouring and pouring, and the slurry is just disappearing. The rebar cages are sinking. The ground is eating the foundation, Grandpa. We hit a void." A massive void. I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. A void? "The monitors say it's a sinkhole," Alex yelled. "The site engineer is calling for an evacuation. He thinks the entire block is unstable. We're going to lose the crane. Grandpa, the sensors didn't see this. The LiDAR scan showed solid limestone." "LiDAR sees the skin," I said, grabbing my coat. "It doesn't see the bones." I hung up. I didn't grab my keys immediately. I paused. I looked at the wall of my garage. Honeycomb shelving, floor to ceiling, filled with thousands of cardboard tubes. The chaotic archive of a city that had forgotten its own anatomy. I knew the Zenith site. Sector 4. The old industrial district. I walked to the shelf marked 1920 to 1940. I ran my fingers over the caps. Distillery. Warehouse. Wharf. I didn't take a tube yet. I needed to see the mud. The drive to the Zenith Tower construction site usually took 20 minutes. I made it in 12. The skyline of the city was changing, jagged teeth of glass and steel biting into the grey sky. The Zenith was supposed to be the crown jewel, 100 stories of residential luxury. Right now, it looked like a disaster zone. I parked my truck on the sidewalk, ignoring the shouting traffic cop. I walked past the perimeter fence. The site was pandemonium, sirens wailing, men in high-visibility vests running in circles. The ground itself seemed to be vibrating, a low-frequency shudder that travelled up through the soles of my boots. In the centre of the pit, a massive yellow crane was leaning. Not much, maybe 2 degrees, but to an engineer 2 degrees is an eternity. It meant the earth below the outriggers was liquefying. "Grandpa," Alex ran towards me. He looked terrible. His designer hard hat was crooked, his face smeared with grey slurry. He was holding an iPad, tapping the screen furiously. Look! He shoved the screen in my face. The 3D model. It shows bedrock, green layer, solid rock. Why is the concrete vanishing? I pushed the iPad away. Put that toy away, Alex. The map is not the territory. I walked to the edge of the excavation pits. The hole was massive, a gaping maw where the main elevator core was supposed to be anchored. A tremmy pipe, the giant hose used to pump concrete, was dangling into the abyss, chugging rhythmically. Thump, thump, thump. It was pumping thousands of dollars of wet cement into the dark and getting nothing in return. I closed my eyes. I listened. I heard the pumps. But underneath the mechanical roar, I heard something else. A hollow sound. A sucking sound. Like a drain clearing in a giant bathtub. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of diesel and wet cement. But there was another note. Faint, but distinct. Sulphur. And wet brick. The smell of a basement that hasn't been opened in 50 years. It's a sinkhole, the site foreman bellowed, running up to Alex. We have to cut the lines. The vibration from the pumps is collapsing the walls. We're losing the crane. No, Alex cried. If we stop pouring, we lose the caisson. The structural integrity. Alex, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise. He turned to me. What? What do we do? It's geology, right? A limestone pocket? I knelt down and picked up a handful of the spoil pile, the dirt brought up by the drill before the pouring started. I rubbed it between my fingers. It wasn't limestone dust. It was black, gritty. Coal dust, I whispered, and red clay. I stood up and pointed to the perimeter of the site. Along the north edge, there was a row of old, gnarled oak trees that had been preserved by the City Park Commission. They stood in a perfectly straight line, cutting diagonally across the block. Look at the trees, Alex, I said. What? The trees? Who cares about the trees? Nature doesn't plant oaks in a straight line, I said. Men do. Those trees were planted in 1930 to mark a boundary. I turned back to the pit. The crane groaned, the metal screeching as it settled another inch. It's not a sinkhole, Alex, I said, wiping the coal dust on my pants. It's a room. You didn't hit nature. You hit history. A room? Alex stared at me. At 80 feet? That's impossible. There's no basement that deep. Not a basement, I said. The midnight line. Alex looked blank. The foreman looked confused. The what? Prohibition, I said, speaking fast now. The ground was trembling. 1925. The city needed a way to move liquor from the docks to the mayor's office without the feds seeing. They dug a tunnel, deep, through the bedrock, reinforced with cast iron and brick. When Prohibition ended, they sealed it up. In 1950, they repurposed part of it as a storm overflow. But then they built the new interceptor and forgot about it. There is no tunnel on the city map, Alex yelled, gesturing to his iPad. We checked the municipal database. We checked the GIS layers. It's blank. Of course it's blank, I snapped. It was illegal. You think the mayor wanted a record of his smuggling route in the public library? Suddenly the ground lurched. A plume of dust shot up from the borehole. The sound of rushing air whistled out of the ground. A massive exhalation. The roof, I muttered. You punched through the roof of the tunnel with the drill. Now you're filling the tunnel with concrete. It will take 1,000,000 yards to fill that line. You're trying to fill a river with a garden hose. The crane, the foreman screamed. It's tipping. Cut the pumps, I shouted. Now, kill the suction. If we stop, the hull collapses, Alex argued. You're creating a vacuum. I grabbed Alex by the lapels of his safety vest. The water in that tunnel is pressurized. It's holding the roof up. You are pumping concrete in, displacing the water, and creating a suction vortex that is pulling the earth down. If you drain the water, the tunnel roof collapses, and this entire construction site falls into a hole the size of a subway station. Alex hesitated. He looked at his iPad. He looked at the tilting crane. He looked at me. Do it, I roared. Kill the pumps. Alex turned to the foreman. Shut it down. Shut it all down. The foreman slammed the emergency stop button. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the concrete pump died. The silence that followed was terrifying. We waited. The ground settled. The crane stopped moving. It hung there precariously, but stable. The whistling sound of the air escaping the hole faded to a hiss. Okay, Alex breathed, wiping sweat and mud from his eyes. Okay. It stopped. But Grandpa, if there's a tunnel down there, a structural void, we can't build the tower. We can't bridge a gap that big. We have to abandon the project. You don't have to abandon it, I said. You have to bridge it. But you can't bridge what you can't see. We can't see it, Alex cried. We can't send a camera down into wet concrete. We're blind. Not blind, I said. Just looking at the wrong map. I turned and walked toward my truck. Where are you going? Alex shouted, running after me. You can't leave. The inspectors will be here in 10 minutes to condemn the site. I opened the door of my truck. I looked back at the massive, expensive, failing construction site. A monument to the arrogance of the digital age. They thought if it wasn't in the computer, it didn't exist. It's not on the digital map, Alex, I said, starting the engine. The 1990 digitization project. They skipped the restricted files. They skipped the temporary infrastructure. So it's gone? No, I said, shifting into gear. It's on the blue sheet. The hand-drawn survey I did in 1978 when we capped the south entrance. I marked the load-bearing arches. I marked the weak points. I marked the ventilation shafts. You have it? Alex asked, his eyes widening. In the garage? I never throw anything away, Alex, I said. Because concrete forgets. Servers crash. But vellum remembers. I revved the engine. Get in, I commanded. If we don't find that tube in 20 minutes, the inspectors shut you down. And if we don't seal that breach correctly, the crane falls. Alex scrambled into the passenger seat, clutching his useless iPad. Sector 4, I muttered to myself as I peeled out onto the muddy road. Restricted. Box 9. Bottom shelf. What? Alex asked. The solution, I said. It's been sitting next to my lawnmower for 30 years. The garage door rattled open, revealing a dusty cathedral of cardboard tubes. To the uninitiated, it looked like the nest of a giant, paper-obsessed rodent. To Alex, my grandson, who lived in a world of sleek lines and cloud storage, it looked like madness. He stood in the doorway, the harsh light of the afternoon sun cutting through the gloom, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Grandpa, he breathed, staring at the floor-to-ceiling honeycomb of shelves. There are thousands of them. How are we supposed to find one tunnel in 20 minutes? We need a search bar. We need an index. I am the index, I said, stepping past him. I didn't run. Panic is for people who don't know where they're going. I walked to the back wall, past the lawnmower, past the jars of rusted screws, to the section I called the Deep Archives. The cardboard here was darker, aged by humidity and time. The labels were handwritten in fading India ink. Sector 4, I muttered, my finger tracing the rows. Industrial, 1920 to 1950, Box 9. This is insane, Alex said, pacing behind me. The crane is tipping, Grandpa. The city inspector is probably putting a padlock on the gate right now. We're digging through trash. It's not trash, Alex, I snapped, pulling a heavy, dust-coated tube from the bottom rack. It's the city's memory. You think the city is made of glass and steel? It's made of decisions, mistakes, and cover-ups. I blew the dust off the cap. Sector 4, restricted, storm/prohibition. I carried it to the workbench. I swept aside a pile of old spark plugs. I popped the cap. The smell of ammonia and old cedar wafted out, the perfume of the drafting room. I pulled the roll out. It was heavy vellum, translucent and stiff. Hold this, I commanded. Alex grabbed the corners. We unrolled it. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a work of art. In the age of CAD, lines are perfect mathematical vectors. In 1978, lines were physical. You could see the pressure of the pen. You could see the hesitation where the ink flowed heavier. There, cutting diagonally across the grid of what was now the Zenith Tower site, was a thick double-dashed line. The midnight line, I whispered. Alex stared at it. It's massive. It's 20 feet wide. Why didn't the drill bounce off? Look at the cross-section. I pointed to the detail view in the corner. Keystone arch, reinforced with cast iron ribs. Not steel, cast iron. Brittle, but incredibly strong under compression. When you drilled for the caisson, you didn't hit the arch. You hit the ventilation shaft. I tapped a small square on the drawing. Right here. The chimney. It was capped with timber and asphalt in 1950. Your drill punched right through the wood, bypassed the iron, and started pumping concrete into the void. So the tunnel is intact? Alex asked, hope flickering in his eyes. The tunnel is fine, I said. The cast iron can hold a skyscraper. The problem is the hole you made in the roof. You're pressurizing the tunnel with wet concrete. If you keep pumping, you'll blow out the side walls, and then the street collapses. So we stop. No, I said, rolling the blueprint up with a snap. We switch the mix. You can't fill the void. You have to seal the wound. We need a grout curtain. I grabbed the tube. Drive. Fast. The ride back was a blur of traffic laws ignored. Alex drove like he was qualifying for a Grand Prix. I held the tube across my knees like a rifle. When we screeched back onto the site, the situation had deteriorated. The crane was now leaning at a sickening 5 degrees. The counterweights were hovering dangerously close to the ground. The site was swarming with men in suits, city inspectors. They were waving papers at the foreman, shutting it down. Stop! Alex yelled, jumping out of the truck. Don't shut down the pumps. It's over, Alex, the lead inspector shouted. He was a man named Henderson, a bureaucrat I recognized from the zoning board. The ground is unstable. I'm condemning the site. Get everyone back. I stepped out of the truck. I didn't yell. I walked straight to the concrete mixer truck that was idling near the pump. The driver looked terrified. You? I said to the driver. What's your slump? 4 inches, sir. Standard structural mix. Too wet, I said. It's flowing like soup into the tunnel. We need it stiff. We need to plug the chimney. I turned to the foreman. Do you have fly ash and sodium silicate? We have an accelerator for the winter pour, the foreman stammered. But dump it in, I ordered. All of it. We are making a flash set plug. Who is this? Henderson demanded, marching over. Sir, this is a restricted area. You are interfering with a municipal safety order. I am interfering with a collapse, I said. I slammed the blueprint tube onto the hood of a pickup truck and pulled out the vellum. I spread it out. Look at the map, Henderson, I said. You're standing on top of a cast iron archway built in 1928. It's capable of supporting 50 tons per square foot. The ground isn't failing. The cap is failing. Henderson looked at the drawing. He saw the official seal of the city planner's office. He saw the date, 1978. This, Henderson squinted. This isn't in the system. The system is 12 years old, I said. This tunnel is 90. Now get out of the way. I turned back to the mixer driver. Add the accelerator. Spin the drum. I want that concrete hot. We pour a grout curtain right at the neck of the breach. It sets in 30 seconds. It seals the hole, and then we can pour the structural pile on top of it. Alex looked at me. Grandpa, if it sets that fast, it could clog the pump. We could blow the line. It won't clog, I said, because we aren't pumping it to the bottom. We are pumping it to the throat. 20 feet down. Short line. High pressure. Alex nodded. He turned to the crew. You heard him. Add the silicate. Spin it up. The crew moved. They stopped asking questions. They saw a man who knew the anatomy of the disaster. The mixer roared as the drums spun up to high speed. The chemical accelerator was dumped in. Pour, I yelled. The pump chugged. Thump, thump, thump. The hose stiffened. The grey sludge shot down the tremie pipe. We waited. The ground rumbled. The crane groaned. Watch the pressure gauge, I shouted. It's spiking, the operator yelled. 100 psi. 200. Good, I said. That means it's hitting resistance. It's capping the hole. 300 psi. Hold it. I raised my hand. Hold it. Wait for the back pressure. The hose jumped. A spray of concrete spit out of the top of the casing. Cut it. I slashed my hand through the air. The pump stopped. Silence. We all looked at the crane. It was still leaning, but it wasn't moving. The slow, terrifying creep of the tilt had stopped. The ground around the outriggers was still. It held, the foreman whispered. The pressure held. The plug is set, I said, wiping concrete dust from my glasses. The void is sealed. You can pour the rest of the pile on top of it now. The cast iron arch will act as a footing. A cheer went up from the crew. Not a loud cheer, but the relieved, exhausted exhale of men who thought they were about to die. Alex slumped against the truck tire. He looked at the blueprint, which was now flapping in the wind, held down by a wrench. Henderson, the inspector, walked over. He looked shaken. He traced the line of the tunnel on the vellum with a trembling finger. This tunnel, Henderson murmured. The midnight line. I thought it was a myth, a rum runner story. It's structural, I said. Myths don't hold up skyscrapers. Cast iron does. Henderson looked at the bottom right corner of the blueprint. The signature block. Approved by William H. Sterling, City Planner, October 14th, 1978. He looked up at me. His eyes widened. Sterling? He asked. You're Bill Sterling? I go by Bill now, I said. You designed the flood grid, Henderson said, his voice changing tone completely. You designed the evacuation routes. My professor in engineering school, he used your schematics as the gold standard. I drew lines, I said, rolling up the vellum. And I made sure they connected. Alex walked over. He took the tube from my hands. He held it like it was a holy relic. Grandpa, he said, you saved the tower. You saved my career. I saved the neighbourhood, I corrected. If that tunnel collapsed, the gas main on 5th Street would have gone with it. Can I keep this? Alex asked, touching the paper. We need to scan it. We need to upload it to the master model. I shook my head. You can keep it, Alex, but don't scan it. Why not? Because if you scan it, you'll stop looking at it, I said. You'll bury it in a folder called Old Stuff and forget it exists. Frame it. Put it on the wall of your office. Put it right behind your fancy computer screen. I tapped his chest. Remind yourself that the map is not the territory. The digital world is just a ghost of the real one. The real world has dirt and rust and secrets. Alex nodded slowly. I will. I promise. I patted his shoulder. I felt tired. The adrenaline was fading, leaving my joints aching. I'm going home, I said. My garage is a mess. I left the iron on. I'll drive you, Alex said. No, I said. Stay here. Finish the pour. Watch the concrete. Don't watch the iPad. I walked back to my truck. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the skeleton of the Zenith Tower. It would stand now. It would scrape the sky. But it would stand on the shoulders of a secret tunnel from 1925. I climbed into the cab and started the engine. As I drove away, I thought about the garage. There were thousands of tubes left, thousands of secrets. I thought about the tube in Sector 8, the stadium project. The city was planning a new football stadium on the west side. They were going to break ground next month. I smiled a grim smile. I need to check box 12, I whispered to myself as I merged into traffic. I seem to recall an old cholera graveyard under the West End zone. They definitely aren't going to find that on the LiDAR. I turned on the radio. The news was already talking about the miracle at the construction site. I just turned it up. I had work to do.